You've hired someone for marketing, but do you actually know what to ask them to do or how to tell if it's working? Today, we're getting into what a junior marketing team can realistically own, how to measure it, and when you've outgrown the setup you have. Welcome to Dear Frannie, the franchise advice column. I'm your host, Katherine LeBlanc. And along with my co host, James Vitrano, we've spent our careers inside growing franchise systems. From marketing to operations, we break down real questions and real challenges and share the kind of answers you only get from experience. Let's jump in.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining Dear Frannie. I'm your host, Catherine.
I'm our co-host, James.
Hey, James, I'm excited to talk today because our Dear Frannie question is all about marketing. And I have lots of soapboxes on marketing. But first, what
Me
guys, let's
too. Ah, all right, let's go. This or that. You ready?
I'm ready.
Catherine, when it comes to franchisees, approved vendor programs with a required vendor list for them, or do you let the franchisee source their own? What say you?
I think this is something that franchisors in their early stages really struggle with because it's hard for them to have the efficiencies of scale that come when you grow to require the vendor program. Because you as a franchisor, one of the benefits you're bringing to your franchisees should be that you're getting their supplies lower at a lower cost than they would get on their own. And so to do that, everybody has to buy from the same person. But when you're starting out, you're not getting that lower cost. And so the franchisee can often find lower costs in their local market or something, along those lines. And so I'll take the position of let franchisees source their own because I think that in some instances, in some businesses, if they are able to get lower costs on their own, that is what you want being driven for them to increase their profitability, especially as you're starting out. That's
Yeah,
my only reason that
yeah. Look, I think like this or that. This is sort of like a meal. Like I get where you're coming from, and I think it is understandable. I think from a pure food perspective and or brand perspective in the restaurant space, I don't want you using somebody that I haven't approved. And I think it's my obligation as a franchisor to not roll out franchising if I don't have at least an approved vendor list for,
Mhm.
the proprietary items or the items that are components of proprietary items. But at the same point in time, I do think that there needs to be most franchise agreements have in there, hey, we will approve your vendor if you bring your vendor to
Mhm.
us type of thing. So, along those lines, one of the benefits of franchising is sometimes the individual franchisee or local franchisee figures out a way to do it better than the franchisor. So I think it needs to be a look. We have these vendors that you have to use. And if you're an emerging franchise and you don't have that, you might want to slow down a little bit or figure that out because that's something you should be bringing to the table. As long as you're offering franchising, I think it's incumbent upon you. But if you either we don't have it or regionally you get a better price or there's a regional benefit because of some unique type of offering that the franchise would allow, I'm not necessarily against it. To quote, Mike Ellis, who was the CDO of Einstein's and then most recently CDO of Portillo's, now quasi-retired. Snowflakes are a problem, so you just got to be careful about that, right?
Mhm.
So I think preference is that that's required vendor, but if you want to bring something to the table, we should review it. But don't let you just go out and grab your local honey supplier, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's the old adage of pick your battles, right? And so to your point of what is your main product, you should have absolutely have an approved vendor program for your main product. But then when you get outside of that main product, where are you going to pick your battles? And so sometimes this comes up in marketing with the print vendor. And the print vendor is it's a very commoditized industry. And so you can often find a cheaper price on the brochure on this site and a business card on this site. So, the franchisor likes you to buy from one so that we can get a collective best price. but also so that we can protect the integrity of the brand and have a quality product in the market when you're marketing. But oftentimes that's a big battle. And, I've been at brands where I want to fight the fight and we're going to have this battle for print material. And I've been at brands that have said, like, this is not the battle that I want to pick. And so if they want to use a local print vendor, they can.
Well, I think you named 2 things here, right? One is like, what is the it, right, that we're fighting about, right? Is it something that is either brand important, right? And that may be different for different brands, right? Like, I may care about the dinner napkin you use, so that's right.
Mhm.
But then secondarily, I think there's, to your group purchasing point, the franchisee or the franchisor needs to be and has to be open, but should be more than what's required in the FTD about rebates and allowances, right? Because a lot of times that not only is it a GPO issue, like how do we aggregate purchasing for purchasing power, but there's a self-serving benefit to the franchise, or that says, you might pay 3 or 4 cents more than you could get your local vendor, but I'm getting a rebate. So that's I don't want to say it's not a shady situation. It's just the way the business is structured. So don't fight it if it's to the detriment of the franchisee on a rebate basis would be my advice,
Yeah.
but you never know what's motivating it. Do you
Well,
have do you have examples of non-food? Like
yeah.
non-food where you think it's good?
Yes. Well, yes. So rebates is a whole other can of worms we're not going to get into.
Alright, we'll talk about that later. No
I
rebate.
do. I absolutely have examples of non-food. I I will give you an example around retail. So, retail products, a lot of times brands will offer, your core service and then, buy something that you use with it, right? So when I was with a med spa, it was the skincare line and vitamin line. When I was working with a craft company right now, and they have tchotchkes and craft kits and different gift items. And so in that, your catalog, even if you have an approved supplier, that catalog of what you can buy from that supplier, it can also be really big. And so it is a something to navigate around. Do you have an approved supplier? And then within that approved supplier, do you have approved products that they can buy? And I think that I would liken it, to if you make a food comparison, same thing, right? Costco or Cisco is selling 3 types of strawberries. Which strawberry is approved for your location versus what's not approved for your location? So I do have lots of examples. And look, supplier relations and
Big
supplier
thing, big
management
thing,
is
big
huge,
thing,
and I
big
have
thing.
seen it blow up systems. And so, it's something that I think you need to have an opinion around as you get started.
Well,
And
certainly as a franchise, like I think it's poor practice to go to the market in a franchise offering that requires certain products, be it non-food or food, where you don't have a supplier or vendor relationship to be able to bring that to market for the franchisee. But secondarily, to your point, vendor relationships are significant. And I am a proponent of the local franchisee that may have a better price with a long-term relationship that enables them to save some money and to ensure that they're going to get the product they want versus no offense to the Cisco's, US Foods of the world. Sometimes those local distribution groups are winners. Most of the time they are. So kudos to the regional local distribution folks, shout out. But I think it's quasi, to use a legal term, malpractice for a franchisor to bring some to the market where they don't have the vendors to do it. Even if you're open about it, like, why am I being a part of you if you can't
yeah,
do X, Y, and Z?
what is your
You
value
know,
proposition to the franchisee? Absolutely.
you know, interesting.
All right, let's jump into our Dear Frannie question. Like I said at the beginning of our chat, we're going to talk about marketing. So, our Dear Frannie question today is: I have a small marketing team, mostly coordinators. I'm not ready to hire a senior marketing leader. How do I know what to expect from them, how to measure their work, and whether I actually have the right setup? So where do you want to start?
Oh my God. I think like you're going to look at it so differently than James is going to look at it. Right. And I think your view of this is going to be very helpful to emerging or even large franchisors. I have just this internal frustration with marketing departments. Okay,
Yep,
no offense,
none
you
taken.
know. Yeah, I don't really have a internal working of marketing departments understanding. I have this, hey CMO, hey VP of marketing, you know, queen bee, or I don't know what the analogy is. Like at the end of the day, depending on your size, like I'm dealing with a group that's got 10 units, they're non-franchising, and their AUVs are 1 million per unit, great AUVs. Everything is good, but they got like 2 or 3 marketing people, and they don't need that. The G&A is just dragging. So my outside non-marketing position is I don't care, CMO, VP of marketing, director of marketing, whoever the lead person or is, if we are paying G&A as an emerging franchisor, are you moving the needle? And the needle in my mind is sales and profitability. Now, you're going to tell me as a marketing person, there's 57 other elements that are needle movers. And I get it. There are a variety of incremental needle movers that end up moving the needles I care about, which are sales and unit level profitability. However, and I'm not at all throwing that out with the bathwater, but I am saying that's for you as the marketing leader to manage. And if we have a whole bunch of folks that are moving paper around and needles aren't getting moved,
Yeah.
I think that any brand owner or executive in that franchisor group is going to have some issues. What say you, lady
Well,
sitting in the seat?
yeah. Well, but tell me, where does your biggest frustration come from? Is that you don't know if they are moving the needle
Yeah,
or just
man.
haven't moved
G&A that
the needle?
G&A that does not yield any measurable output, right? Like it doesn't have to be a direct attribution because I'll give it to you. Where is the marketing initiative that gives you a direct attribution? But we have to at least show that the efforts and initiatives of A, B, C, and or D are pushing the brand in a profitable way that's
Mhm.
showing some sort of measurable growth period over period, quarter over quarter.
Well,
But
I think
20 people running around doing graphic design
great.
and some social media makes me want to throw something against the wall. But
Yep.
you're the marketing person. You're the person I would say, Catherine, we're going to have to get rid of everybody and you're going to have to do it all because I don't know marketing and we got to change things. And you got to tell me, well, Vetrano, we got to keep 2. Or this is why we got to have 9. What
Right.
say you, marketing goddess?
Heck, I think that your frustration is so real. And this is why I was excited to talk to you about this topic today, because what I've seen happen is that, emerging brands or not, before you hire the brands, before you hire a senior leader, you hire a bunch of people to do actions. You hire a graphic designer, you hire a social media person, maybe you hire a project manager, maybe you hire somebody to run local store marketing. And so you're hiring this manager, coordinator, director level. They're, at the end of the day, if they're not providing strategy and they don't know how to communicate how they're moving the needle, they are not senior, period. And so
Agreed.
you've hired this layer, and then you as the CEO don't necessarily know anything about marketing, but you need it. You need the flyer. You need the social media. You need somebody coaching the franchisee on local store marketing, but you don't know how to measure success. And to your point, yes, success is, did I drive sales? Did I drive revenue? But the gap is that as the CEO, you don't know how to coach your marketers to drive either of those things. And you don't know what to ask them for on whether or not they're moving the needle. Right. And so let's say like, okay, social media is a great one because everybody hires in-house for social media because they think they can get it cheaper than hiring an agency. They're both going to be equally expensive, and social media is necessary. It's one of the ways that people discover the brand. But social media is an awareness play, right? So really measuring how that is moving the needle on revenue is hard. And so you have to find the measures and the metrics that matter in social. And that might be follower count for you. That might be engagement on your posts for you. That might be impressions of how many people saw your post for you. But giving everybody a number, I think, is one step towards, hey, is this moving the needle? And really you have to tell, like, you have to do the backwards logic of, I need sales to grow. In order for sales to grow, I need my brand awareness to grow. In order for brand awareness to grow, what needs to happen in social media? what needs to happen in graphic design. In graphic design, they need to be producing X number of pieces and supporting whatever the marketing initiative is that drives the sales and revenue. And so I think the big gap in why CEOs feel frustrated is because you don't need a big ticket senior marketer at the beginning, and because there's not enough for them to do. But you do need some of these, you can either farm it out to an agency or you can hire this lower level lift. But there's no way, like, you have to add those metrics in order to know if they're doing activities that then drive the needle. Because just looking at sales is also not going to give you an indicator,
I
right?
agree, and that's an absolute macro, right? And so, to your point, I think when it comes to emerging brands or emerging franchisors, as a guy who's run an emerging brand, owned an emerging brand, franchised others, like, if I could go back and do it, the marketing expense is a hard one to swallow out the gate, but I think the best way to do it is you need a worker bee internally because you're going to have somebody doing this stuff. But there's good value in bringing on somebody like yourself who's sort of that, high level person that can help translate or help interpret or help explain to the founder or executive what are those elements that need to be done? And then pump those out
Yeah.
to the person doing them or the 2 or 3 vendors that you can afford as you step into it. So, to me, the mysteries of marketing are something that I just do not enjoy drilling into, but they are the necessaries and necessities to ensuring that brand awareness exists and that customers come in because those brands who think we're just gonna unless you've got some unique niche offering, right, where people are going in out of curiosity, or you're offering some elite fine dining experience, the whole build it, they will come, or if we just operate a really good restaurant, word will get out. That stuff went away with ribbon cuttings on Main Street.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it is important that you're gonna have to, as part of your growth plans, put some line item in for somebody to do it all the time, be it you or somebody else, but really somebody who's going to help you think about what and when you are going to be doing and the accountability associated with it. The frustration I have is when you start hiring or you start listening to a marketing leader and there's this continual add-on that doesn't have a clear alignment on whatever initiatives we're trying to achieve and
Right.
some measurability against that. And to
Yeah.
your point, I think that is key of whatever we're going to do and whoever's going to do it. It might not be sales, it may not be store profitability, but we're going to pick 2 to 5 metrics that we're gonna measure that we think
Yeah.
will then lead to that. What about you? Like, when you're asked to come on to a group who's kind of already started, emerging or not, into that web of marketing,
Yeah.
is it hard?
Yes, marketing is hard, because everybody's a marketer. Everybody has an opinion, and yours is never the expert opinion, even though you've been doing it for 25 years. But there's two personas that marketers work. One,
The marketing frustration, I wanna have a podcast about that, but keep going. 2,
no,
2 personas,
it's
2 personas.
boring. Nobody wants to hear me bitch. But
I do.
there's two people that you work with in marketing. One is the operator, and you are an example of the operator. You don't understand marketing. You don't know why it's important. You don't care. And it's an expense that you were like, why do I need to spend this much money? Number one. Number two, the other persona is the visionary who knows everything they is the marketing, is, just knows everything about marketing, has all of the ideas, and is really excited about marketing and understands the importance. And so those are the two personas that you get to work with when you're in marketing. The operator persona is it's hard to break through, and it's hard to communicate to that persona. Marketing is momentum, and marketing is what is going to drive sustainability in your business. And if you think about, and I wanted to say especially in food, but it really is all over the place. In food, you get to be new news coming out of the gate. I think you have an awesome concept. You're an emerging brand with an awesome, unique concept that is going to attract attention and attract news as you grow. And so some of that momentum is going to come to you organically. But some of it you can't you have to invest in order to amplify it. And so those are things like the influencers and the brand awareness and all the things that you're going to do around brand awareness. But getting you to spend the dollars to invest in that is hard. And that's where when I'm a marketer working with your persona type, I really have to tie back what are the numbers, what are the metrics, and how is this going to drive into sales? Even if it's not driving sales tomorrow, I really need to kind of take that spreadsheet point of view and say, this is how it's going to impact sales tomorrow. And then the other persona you work with is the visionary, kind of all over the place. They know marketing, they are the brand. And the challenge I have with that group is that they are the brand, and it's hard to layer on non kind of persona marketing programs to make the brand stand on its own. And so with that persona, you really have to think through, they have to be in the mindset that they're ready to move forward. But where I'm going with this is back to the Dear Frannie question around, okay, I've got this junior level team. I don't know what they're working on. I don't know if what they're working on is working. Owners get frustrated with this. And it's because you're not able to provide the structure or the support or the guidance to that marketing team so that they know what they're actually supposed to be doing. And so that's where I do think that if you could, um, and it doesn't have to be hiring a consultant like me, but if you could find a marketer that you're friends with and say, give me the framework, give me what are the three metrics I should be judging on? And what are the things that are going to help this group learn their craft, right? Because you learn by doing. In marketing, you learn, there's a lot of textbook that you can learn from, but you learn by doing. And they need to be given the bandwidth to do it. Because what happens is that the operator guy comes in and they're just always upset with marketing and they're fussing at them to do something and we don't know what to do, right? The junior team. Then the visionary comes in and they're always upset with marketing because marketing is not living in their brain and they can't read their mind. And so they're changing the direction, just flip flop, flip flop, flip flop. And so I would say to the CEOs, like, understand who you are and then what is going to help you understand what success looks like for marketing. And then to understand to your team, consistency, be a good boyfriend, right? Be consistent, follow up on what you're going to do. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And then when you flip flop, like, you got to give the context and the why you're flip flopping. I'm not saying don't flip flop, but you got to give the context and why, because as a marketer, you're never going to learn and be able to stay ahead of it unless you get all of that information.
So it's really good advice as a guy who has brought on a junior marketing person reporting directly to me in an emerging brand while we were taking it from 2 to 10. It was the biggest mistake I've ever made because I don't have that patience
Right.
to interpret. I was, I can at times be a little visionary. And so I don't have that patience to take my strategic vision and break it down into marketing elementary terms, nor do I, quite frankly, probably have the intelligence, but I certainly don't have the experience. And then on the operator side, like, it just wouldn't translate at that junior point. So, that I think the value of some sort of interpretive guru that has that ability to manage you, operator or visionary, whatever that executive owner person is, my suggestion would be make sure you're budgeting or your brand can afford that intermediary until you can afford that permanent. Because from my standpoint, having a whole bunch of people running around doing stuff, whether it moves the needle or not, to the extent there isn't strategic leadership and comprehension of what they're doing to your ultimate goals, leads to immediate frustration. It just does, right?
Yeah.
No matter
And
how bad of a boyfriend I may be, if I
right.
don't understand what they're doing and I don't have the ability to communicate it, I think that's to our Dear Franny author, hire somebody to help you out of that situation, either from a management and interpretation or uh, a termination standpoint,
Well,
to
I'll because I think to your point, like, if you're hiring a marketing person going from 2 to 10, great example. And I'm actually coaching somebody right now that is in this situation. What I see happen is that people CEOs, brands think that they need to hire somebody to do social. They hire for the channel. I'm hiring for social. I'm hiring for this. At that stage, and I would argue at stage, the number one thing your marketer needs to be thinking about is how am I getting my product in the person's hands? I don't care. Like social gets so over, it requires a lot of resources and it gets so over invested in. If you like spend that same dollar on that marketing person going out and sampling and getting that product into people's hands to drive word of mouth advertising, is going to be as valuable as hiring a $5,000 a month social media person. And so if it's one or the other, you want to drive your product in the person's hand. And if that's the direction that you need to give that junior person, that in and literally that's what I told this person I'm coaching today of your job is to think about how am I getting this product in every single person's mouth in the 4 block radius. Period. I don't want you thinking about anything else. Don't get distracted by anything else. How am I getting this product into the person's mouth? Because that's how things get started. And then you can start layering on and layering on and layering on. I think people get sucked into the like, I do it because I'm expected to, or I do it because that's what everybody told me I should do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think from a Dear Franny standpoint on this one, for anybody who is thinking about hiring a junior person, my advice as somebody who's walked in it and had to live with it for a while is you might want to talk to a marketing professional before you pull the trigger on bringing in a junior and get stuck with that because the day to day of it, it's like alluring and interesting, and you think, oh my gosh, I'll think of a variety of things and they'll go execute it.
Well,
If it's not your bailiwick, you're just gonna get stuck.
yeah,
So,
it
you know,
is frustrating.
he or she needs to hire you to get him out of it, or hire me to fire all them, and then
That's
let's build it from the beginning. You know.
sounds like a plan.
All right,
I
what'd you learn? Give me top two or three or seven or whatever you want to do.
My takeaways are, I think from our this or that conversation, I think where I landed was pick your battles because I think you made some really great points of like what's a must have vendor, and then there's some situations where the franchisee may be able to find a better solution. My other takeaway is, honestly, it's a to do, and I really want to think about how do we solve that frustration for brands that have the junior marketing team because it's a frustration on both sides. The junior marketing team is also frustrated. And so how do we solve that frustration in a way that drives more sales for the brand? And then my biggest takeaway for you to take away is if you do hire a junior person, give them a really specific, this is what I want you to do. And it should be around brand awareness. Brand awareness and word of mouth is going to be what grows your brand, not your social media page.
Those are good ones. Mine would be on the vendor side of things. Like, don't roll it out unless you got a vendor program. Like, just don't. You don't have to have a fully comprehensive one, but make sure you've got ones that can ensure your proprietary items in your offering is significant. And if you already rolled one out and you're missing some, be open with the franchisee about that. And make sure you're not leaning in too hard solely because of rebates. On the Dear Franny, I would say, look, marketing is momentum, and I kind of love that. You're gonna have to look at it as an investment or tax, depending on how you want to look at it, right? Like it's just something that eventually will pay off and or something you're gonna have to pay at some point in time. So whatever floats your boat on it, but marketing is momentum and it's a hard thing to go from zero to something. And sometimes it takes time. It's like your 401k or your Roth IRA. It's
Mhm.
just not gonna pay off overnight, rarely. And then I think the third thing about it is, there needs to be an interpretive party that helps the owner, executive, founder with the junior team if you're in that space. And before you hire anybody, and even when you hire somebody, there needs to be constant clarity of the measurements and the accountabilities.
Yes.
So the conversation needs to be these are the things I want you to achieve. Can you achieve them? And how are we going to measure it? And if I don't speak marketing, then it's a recipe for disaster and failure if I bring on a junior person for that junior person in the brand. So, maybe hire an interpreter or a marketing therapist such as yourself to help, us through it. I have really taken that one in the teeth. So good, Dear Franny question.
Yeah.
I can
Well,
empathize.
I love the constant clarity, and that should be a mantra for every leader. I think that if every leader brought that into their day, their team would be so much better for it.
Well, I think the big thing about it is at the end of the day, you have to confirm that, like, have I been clear? And then do you understand what I'm saying? And tell me what you heard, right? And
Yep.
so that doing that just on every interaction and or every period ensures that we are continually tracking and it will let you know if there's problems right up. Especially look in the marketing world, a lot of mystery. So I would say to the operators and the visionaries out there, you got to circle back frequently.
All right. Well, if our discussion feels familiar, you're not behind, you're right on time. Thanks for joining us on Dear Frannie, and please share this with somebody who needs to know that they are not alone.
They aren't